Hello everybody. I butchered those two rabbits yesterday, and today I'm going to show you one of the ways my family prepares them to eat. I have them clean. There's no blood or anything left. I'll include the recipe in the comments or in the description for anybody who doesn't follow along. I'm going to show how to quarter them and how we prepare them in the crock pot. So if you give me, I have two, so I'm gonna just quarter them up quick and then I will prepare them. I'm gonna have to rotate my phone, ignore my hot mess of the kitchen. Okay. This is the first rabbit I'm going to be working with. This was the male. He's much smaller, as you can see. He's very stiff. Rigor mortis set in. So while I'm quartering him, I'm going to take his hips, his front legs, his back straps, his tenderloins, and then I'll separate the stomach flaps for later. Personally, with these ones, I'm probably not going to save them, the bones and whatnot, but in the past, I've saved them and made bone broth, which is very simple. It's just boiling the bones with water, and it makes like a stock with them to replace chicken stock or any other kind you use. That way, like I've said before, none of the rabbit goes to waste. So right now, I'm going to just remove this hip straight off the bat, and that way it makes it a little bit easier for me to show what it's supposed to look like. Forgive me, I'm a bit out of practice. It's been a little while since I've butchered. So you're gonna have to break the bone. You'll hear it breaking and popping and snapping and all that fun stuff. But I'm gonna make a small, running away. Small little cut if I can get him to hold still. And now the hip is disconnected like this. He was a domestic rabbit, so the hip is not as large as it would be on my meat rabbits. I'm going to just twist the hip bone out right now, as I don't want that chunk of bone in there. It's going to hurt teeth later. So now it's just got this little itty bitty piece left. And we're going to just set it off to the side. So when you're doing this, typically I lay them flat because it breaks the hip already. So in doing this, you can see there's a little incision right where the hip moves. I did not make that. It's a natural incision. And then around, it's held on by fat and then the bone, of course. So basically what we're going to do, switch this to my dominant hand, is just follow that little line and go down, break the hip. There we go. Just like that. Follow it down along the spine and cut it out. And just like that, we have our other back leg. Set it off to the side. When you're doing this, make sure your meat is cleaned completely of hair and dirt. Learned from experience, it does not taste good in your food, and it's not really pleasant to get stuck in between your teeth. Here's the stomach flap. You can see I just kind of cut down along the rib and then just ripped it off the rest of the way. I'll probably end up feeding this one to the cats or adding it to our future bacon supply, just to see how it tastes. Maybe I'll flay it up, I don't know. So there's both stomach flaps. Nice and easy. So for the front shoulders, you can see there's kind of a joint, and it connects right in here. Here's the rib cage. There's just this little membrane that holds it on, basically. So you're going to snip through the membrane and all the way through and down just like that. The front shoulders are barely connected by anything at all. I didn't do a very good job with that when I made a small cut here. My knife is very, very sharp. So later, this skin is just going to peel right off while it's cooking, and it will not stay on the meat. You'll never taste it. You'll never know it's there. So we're going to do the same on this side. And there's your second shoulder. Just like that. Now is the harder part, which is going to be the tenderloins and back straps. The tenderloins are going to be the harder one to get to because the rib cage is in the way. So what we're going to do is slide the knife. Let's start with the back straps. Woo. With the back straps, it starts all the way up here, runs down to the edge of the tail, right, or down to the end of the hips where the bones are connected. And we're going to run it right along the spine. It's going to be a little bit harder to show without cutting myself, so just going to have to make do with it. You can see I split it down right along the spine. You can feel where the bones are. Now we're going to go the rest of the way up between the shoulder blades. Usually I don't try to make this look pretty because it's just food, but we're going to try to make it look a little pretty this time, so it's going to take me a little bit longer. A typical flay out usually takes me 5-ish minutes. So the tenderloins run right along next to the back strap, so I would take the back straps out first. Typically you can just pull once you get to this part. Once you get up here, it gets a little bit more challenging because they slide into this flap where the stomach connected. So we're just going to snip this off and add it to our little fillet pile here. This chunk I'm just going to feed to cats with the bones. Or you can add it into your bone broth. It adds a little extra flavor. So now we're going to go up here. You should probably wear gloves. A lot of people say to wear gloves. I just personally wash my hands. If I wear gloves, I'll take off a finger. I am too much of a menace with a knife. So I'm just going to run the knife right along the rib cage. Let's see if I can't do this. I'll show you. Don't worry about making super fancy cuts and trying to make it a special angle like this. I'm only cutting it like this so that I can show what I'm doing. So here's one back strap and a little bit of the stomach skin. I'll probably trim that off or I'll just leave it, one of the two. You can't really taste it. So the back straps are the super thick. It's basically your fancy steak, per se. It's the fancy steak part of a cow or a pig or deer. So we're going to do the same on this side and run it down. I'm going to be a little bit quieter in this video because I'm focusing on not trying to lose limbs. This meat is very slippery because I washed the little remainder of hair. So I recommend getting as much hair off as possible while butchering so that by the time you come to the processing part of it, you're not going to take off a finger or anything else. I've lost nails. I've cut my finger really deep trying to do this while it's wet. I just suggest doing it while you're in the butchering process so you don't have to try to do it while you're cooking. So I'm going to run this along. Now I probably just pull it. And there's back strap number 2. Tenderloins up inside here. It's the last little bit. We are gonna just run our knife along the rib cage and separate it as much as possible. I recommend a smaller knife while doing this. I'm just doing it with a bigger knife because it's the sharpest one I have at the moment. To do this as quick as possible. So, tenderloins are always a pain in the butt to get out, and I somehow always manage to mess them up slightly. So they don't typically come out looking pretty, but don't really care how pretty it is when you're eating it, as long as it tastes fine. With the tenderloins, you have to be really careful. You can get little bone fragments because it runs right along the spine. And if your knife is sharp enough, it will just cut right through the bone like mine just did and make a huge mess. You can do a rabbit hole in the crock pot. I'm quartering them up. My father does not like the tiny bones. They gross him out. So. And there's one tenderloin. These are really small. He was not a meat rabbit, but that's one. You can see these little bone fragments, maybe, kind of in there, right along here. It will fall out while it cooks, so I'm not too concerned about it. Let's get the other one out real quick and we can move on to the next process. Maybe. And that one got kind of cut in half, but we're going to call it good. The cats will eat what's left. So there's what's left. It's just rib meat, which the cats will eat, and the chickens, and then the red little meat fragments along the spine. These are the bones right along here, these white things. I got as much meat off as humanly possible. So I'm going to just edit it out, and we'll skip on to processing the next part of the rabbit.